You still send an offering, okay? That's still doable. But the tithes, you notice how I said the third tithe, the second tithe, the first tithe, that stuff is gone. All right? Ask the pastor about that. Oh, okay, you asked for tithes. What about the second tithe? What about the third tithe? They don't know nothing about that because it's not established anymore. This is what Christ did away with. Okay? The sabbatical year. Let's go into this. Go into the laws on this. Number 134. Every seventh year is a Sabbath of rest for the land. Leviticus chapter 25, verse 2 through 5. And actually, if you can rehearse this, it would be great. This is what's going to heal the land. But in this particular land, good luck. Number 135. Whatever the land yields during the Sabbath year will be for food. Exodus chapter 23, verse 10 through 11. Leviticus chapter 25, verse 6 through 7. Because what this means is when you grow herbs and spices and stuff on your land and you just stop, it has a tendency to come back, even if you don't water it. You know, it'll still grow. Ivy will come back. All that stuff will grow, even when you don't touch it after a while. Man's hand, you know, if you grow it naturally takes over. If you grow it chemically with GMOs, it will die. It will not produce again. Okay? I know. Number 136. You must concentrate and proclaim the Jubilee year, which is the seventh year. Leviticus chapter 25, verse 10 through verse 12. Number 137. On the Day of Atonement of the Jubilee year, the shofar must be sounded and the Hebrew slaves set free. Leviticus chapter 25, verse 9 through 10, comma, 13. This is not the 4th of July. All right? He was not set free on the 4th of July. Number 138. In the Jubilee year, all the land is to be returned, or Juneteenth. I have to go backwards. Brothers celebrate Juneteenth. We was not free during Juneteenth either. You know, somebody got paid off of us. That's what happened. Number 138. In the Jubilee year, all the land is to be returned to its appointed owners. Leviticus chapter 25, verse 23 through 24, comma, verse 28. So the Indians should have this land back. Number 139. In a walled city, the seller has a right to buy back a house within a year of the sale. Leviticus chapter 25, verse 29 through 30. Number 140. The years unto the Jubilee must be counted. Leviticus chapter 25, verse 8. Number 141. The seventh year is the year of release. Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 1 through 3. Number 142. In the seventh year, a foreigner may be pressed for payment of a debt. Deuteronomy chapter 15 and 3. And this goes into the credit card issues or a loan issue. They must repay us or wash away your debt after the seventh year. But what they do is they sell it to another creditor or debtor by the fifth year. So the 7 years starts all over again. This is wicked. That's why you know you're in Mystery Babylon. Number 143. Let's go into the clean animals fit for consumption and offerings. The offerings are not here anymore. You do not take animals and give it to the priest for that. All right. Number 143. The priest must receive their share of all clean animals that are slaughtered as a sacrifice. Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 3. Number 144. The priest must receive the first fleece for the shearing of sheep. Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 4. All these are not in order anymore. Number 145. Anything devoted to Yahawah becomes most holy to Yahawah and becomes the property of the house of Yahawah and the priest. Leviticus chapter 27, verse 28. Does not apply. Number 146. To be fit for consumption, clean animals must be slaughtered. Do not eat what dies of itself, or is killed by wild beasts. Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 21. Number 147. The blood of slaughtered clean animals must be poured on the ground and covered with earth. Leviticus chapter 17, verse 13. Number 148. Set the mother bird free when taking the nest of the young. Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 6 through Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 6 through 7. Number 149. Examine the meat of animals to make sure it is permitted for consumption. Leviticus chapter 11, verse 2 through 3. Number 150. Examine fowl or birds to make sure they are permitted for consumption. Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 11. Number 151. Examine locusts to make sure they are permitted for consumption. Leviticus chapter 11, verse 21 through 22. Yes, you can eat locusts. The only bug you can eat. You cannot eat escargot, okay? Or any other crazy bug. Number 152. Examine fish to make sure they are permitted for consumption. Leviticus chapter 11, verse 9 through 10. Number 153. Let's get into the feast and the Sabbaths. The feast and the Sabbaths. The new moons are to be observed to set Yahawah's feast. And yes, we do keep these ceremonial feast days and Sabbaths. That's going to be Exodus chapter 12, verse 2. Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 1. Number 154. The seventh day of every week is Yahawah's Sabbath, rest, and a holy convocation. Exodus chapter 23, verse 12. Number 155. Keep the Sabbath day holy by making preparation in advance. Exodus chapter 20, verse 8 through 11. Semicolon. Exodus chapter 16, verse 23. Number 156. Remove all leaven from all your property before the 15th of Abib. Exodus chapter 12, verse 15. That's the Feast of Unleavened Bread week, which is 7 days. Number 157. On the 15th day of Abib, teach our children the story of Exodus from Egypt. Exodus chapter 13, verse 8. Number 158. Eat unleavened bread from the 15th through the 21st of Abib. Exodus chapter 12, verse 18. Number 159. The first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, or Passover, is a Sabbath of rest and a holy convocation. Cooking may be done on a feast day Sabbath, but not on the weekly Sabbath. Okay? Exodus chapter 12, verse 16. Number 160. The seventh day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread is a Sabbath of rest and a holy convocation. Exodus chapter 12, verse 16. Number 161. Count 50 days from the day after the first holy day Sabbath for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The count of Omer to the Feast of Weeks. This is Pentecost, which means 50. Leviticus chapter 23, verse 15 through 16. Number 162. The Feast of Weeks is the Sabbath of rest and of holy convocation. Leviticus chapter 23, verse 21. Number 163. The Feast of Trumpets is a Sabbath of rest and a holy convocation. Leviticus chapter 23, verse 24. Number 164. The Day of Atonement is a day of complete fasting from evening to evening. From evening to evening. Leviticus chapter 16, verse 29 through 31. Number 165. The Day of Atonement is a Sabbath of rest and a holy convocation. Leviticus 23, verse 27 through 32. Number 166. The first day of the Feast of Tabernacles is a Sabbath of rest and a holy convocation. Leviticus 23, verse 34 through 35. Number 167. The great day is a Sabbath of rest and a holy convocation. Leviticus 23, verse 36. What's that great day? The Sabbath day. It's a high holy day. Number 168. Dwell in booths. Dwell in booths, Sakah. Temporary dwellings, alright? During the Feast of Tabernacles. Leviticus chapter 23, verse 42. So you could go camping during that time. Number 169. You can, remember, we're rehearsing the righteous acts by doing this. Number 169. A Sakah must be built before the Feast of Tabernacles. Leviticus chapter 23, verse 40. Number 170. Sound the shofar on the Feast of Tabernacles. On the Feast of Trumpets. Sound the shofar on the Feast of Trumpets. Numbers chapter 29, verse 1. Laws concerning the duty of the community and observing the authority of Yahawah's laws and Yahawah's anointed. Okay, so we're going to go in this. This is number 171. Every male 20 years old and above must give half a shekel to the house of the Most High annually. Exodus chapter 30, verse 12 through 16. That's when a man becomes a man. Okay? 12 is the age of responsibility. 20 is the age of being a man, getting a job, and participating to help Israel. Also is the age of going to war. Number 172. Listen to and obey Yahawah's anointed servant, the overseer of the house of Yahawah. Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 15 through 19. Now, the overseer now is who? Yahawashi, Mashiach. Number 173, the king must be appointed by Yahawah. Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 15, and he appointed him, and he is waiting to come back. Number 174, listen to and obey Yahawah's anointed priests, the body of elders of the house of Yahawah, under the direction of the overseer of the house of Yahawah. Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 9 through 11. Deuteronomy 17, verse 9 through 11. Okay. Number 175, speak the truth when testifying in a lawsuit or an investigation. Exodus chapter 23, verse 2. So it's telling you to speak the truth. Some of you brothers think if you don't say anything that you're exempt. But it says speak the truth. Okay? Number 176. The priests and their assistants must be chosen by Yahawah. Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 18. Remember that one. They must be chosen by the Most High. Many are chosen, but many are called, but few are chosen, right? Number 177. The priests of the house of Yahawah, chosen by Yahawah, must judge the people impartially according to Yahawah's laws. Leviticus 19, verse 15. We don't have a house to set that up. So now we're going out there commanding it to their face, letting them know that there are laws, they still exist, and we must keep them. And the Most High will judge them. Okay? Our job is to be the voice and to announce it. Number 178. Whoever is aware of evidence in a case must speak up and testify. Leviticus chapter 5, verse 1. Number 179. The testimony of witness shall be examined thoroughly by the priest. Deuteronomy chapter 13, verse 14. Number 180. False witnesses shall be judged according to the law. Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 19. This false witness shall be judged according to the law. We still do that. Okay? Number 181. We're trying to establish the kingdom of heaven right now. So we have to do it by what? Showing people that we are witnesses for the Most High by showing the judgments that's coming on Israel based on them breaking the law. All right? And many of these pastors are false witnesses because they are, in these religions are false witnesses because they do not teach the law of the Most High. To give our people the understanding or give our people the sense of right from wrong. Number 181. When a person is found murdered and the murderer is unknown, the prescribed ritual must be performed. Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 1 through 9. So we had investigators, we had detectives in our society, okay? We were a law-abiding people. Let's go to number 182. 6 cities of refuge in the land of Israel must be established. Numbers chapter 35, verse 11 through 13. We don't have that anymore, especially here in America. You got too many cameras for one, and the cameras judge you. The cameras judge you and change the minds of people. Number 183, the priests and Levites must be given cities to live in. Numbers chapter 35, verse 2 through 3. We don't have that anymore. All right, this doesn't apply. Number 184, build a guardrail around a roof if it is flat and used as living space, and guard against hazards in the home. Deuteronomy 22, verse 8. So what they do now is they make, you see a lot of that construction done back in the days where they would have flat roofs with gutter systems gutter systems. And now what they do is they make your houses with the, I forget the technical name of it, but you see a lot of houses looking like they're coned up, right? And they have the tile on it, and the tile, it keeps you from just going up there on your roof now. People just can't go up on their roof. They do take the chance of falling off, but we were a holy people. We had, on top of our roofs, we always had like a deck where you could walk on top of the roof and look at the stars, and that was a way of our retreating, getting away. King David did that, right? So in order to protect the people who go up on the roof, we used to have guardrails so they didn't fall off. Number 185, let's go into the God worship. All right, the worship of different gods. All right, number 185, the practice of God worship must be destroyed. Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 2 through 4. All right, holidays stem from other gods. Okay, that's filthy communication, believe it or not. Number 186, a city which turns to God worship must be treated according to the law. Deuteronomy chapter 13, verse 12 through 15. Number 187, the God worshiping nations who utterly refuse to repent will suffer destruction. Deuteronomy chapter 20, verse 17. Number 188, blot out the remembrance of God worshippers. Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 19. This is idolatry. Number 189. Remember what the God worshippers did to Israel. Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 17 through 18. Let's go into the laws concerning times of tribulation and persecution, which we're in now. Number 190. Our conduct must be according to the Most High's laws during times of persecution. Deuteronomy chapter 20, verse 11 through 12. This is what we need now. Number 191, the priest must address the congregation in times of tribulation. Deuteronomy chapter 20, verse 2 through 4. This is why they bring these pastors out when riots and things of that nature happen with our people. They don't bring it with any other nation, have you noticed? The only time they bring out these so-called preachers and ministers is when you Negroes act up. This is how you know that you're Israel too. Number 192, the camp of Yahawah must be kept in a sanitary condition. Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 9. Number 193, the camp of Yahawah must be equipped with the necessary implements to keep it in a sanitary condition, and each must do his part. Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 12 through 14. Our duties to our fellow men, let's read that. Our duties to our fellow men. Number 194, stolen property must be returned to its owner. This applies, like I said, about the tribulation and persecution. That stuff applies except for the priest part, because we don't have our priest anymore. All right, we're trying to establish that. Number 195, the poor must be taken care of according to Yahweh's laws. Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 8, verse 11. Number 196, when a Hebrew slave goes free, the owner must give him gifts. Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 12 through 14, 18. Number 197, loans to brothers must be without interest. Exodus chapter 22, verse 25. Number 198, loans to a foreigner may be with interest. Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 20. Number 199, restore a pledge for a loan to its owner if he needs it. Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 12 through 13. Number 200, pay the hired worker his wages at the agreed time. Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 14 through 15. These are laws that we have to follow. Number 201. Permit the poor to eat of the produce of the vineyard or the standing grain. Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 24 through 25. Number 202, help a stranger who has a fallen animal. Exodus chapter 23, verse 5, you should do that out of the consciousness of your mind, out of the urgency of your mind. You should help your brother. With his dog, cat, whatever it may be. Number 203, help a brother who has a fallen animal. Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 4. Number 204, lost property must be restored to its owner. Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 1. You know, that used to be a time when we didn't have locks on our doors. Now, you think anybody keeping that law? We wouldn't have locks on our doors if that wasn't the case. So this place is wicked. Every house has locks. Every car has locks. That's the wickedness of this society, having locks on our doors. Okay. Number 205. Those who sin must be corrected. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 17. Number 206. Love your neighbor, whether a brother or an enemy, as yourself. Leviticus 19, verse 18. Number 207. Love the stranger and the new convert among you. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 34. Number 208. Use only honest weights and measures. Leviticus 19, 36. That's dealing with interest fees and usury fees. You know, people don't do that anymore. They don't use honest weights and measures. You work and they take a lot of money out of your check. That's dishonesty. Family. Let's talk about family. Number 209. Show honor and respect for Yahawah's appointed teachers. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 32. All right. When we out there all the time. Number 210. Show honor and respect to parents. Exodus chapter 20, verse 12. Number 211, become holy as Yahawah is holy. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 2. Number 212, bring forth the holy seed, 144,000 holy priesthood promised to Abraham. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 through 28. Number 213, marriage must be according to Yahawah's laws. Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. Number 214, a bridegroom is to rejoice with his bride. Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 5. Number 215, all males must be circumcised. Newborn males on the 8th day. Genesis chapter 17, verse 10 through 12, comma, verse 14. Number 216, should a man die childless, his brother must either marry the widow. Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 5 through 6. And I will say on this one, in this wicked society, this does not apply. Although it does happen, but it doesn't apply. Normally the woman wants out of the family, and or the man releases her. Number 217, he may release his brother's widow. There it is right there. He may release his brother's widow. Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 7 through 10. Let's go to number 218. A man who violates a virgin must pay the bride price. Marry her if the father permits, and may never divorce her. Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 29. That's when you rape a girl, you got to stay with her forever. Okay? Number 219. And most brothers ain't going to do that. All right? There's a penalty for everything. You just can't just do what you want to do, take what you want to take. You know, there's a penalty. We were a righteous people. Number 219. The priest must judge in a case of premarital promiscuity. Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 13 through 15. All right. Number 220, a woman's father may utterly refuse to give his daughter to a man even though he pays the bride price. Exodus chapter 22, verse 16 through 17. All right, I could go in on that, but I'm not. Number 221, the female captive must be treated in accordance with special regulations concerning repentance and conversion. Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 11 through 14. Number 222, divorce can only be for the cause of premarital fornication. Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 1 through 4. Number 223, a woman suspected of adultery must submit to the required tests. Numbers chapter 5, verse 12 through 15. This does not apply anymore. You read that chapter and you'll see what I'm talking about. We don't have potions and things of that nature to tell you that the woman has been fornicating or committing adultery while she's married. You know, we don't have those medicines anymore. Figure that out. Everything's contaminated. Number 224. When required by law, the judges must administer the appropriate punishment. Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 2 through 3. Number 225. The law concerning unintentional homicide. Numbers chapter 35, verse 22 through 25. Now, judgments as far as stoning people and taking the stuff into our own manners, we cannot do that anymore. It must go before the courts of the county, the cities, and the state, and the federal judges, okay, of this land. No longer do we have an order within our family to do these things. And when I say family, I'm talking about the family of Israel. Number 227, but this is just showing you what our heritage was like when we ruled. Number 227, there is one law for all, for the house of Yahawah and for the house or for the stranger. Number chapter 15, verse 15 through 16. Number 228, one who sins, breaks any of Yahawah's laws, whether intentionally or unintentionally, is guilty. Look at that. So all you people that say you didn't know the law, you're going to be judged by the law. Okay? It's just like this law of the land that's set up. You will be fined if you act like you didn't know that there was a law that existed for doing what you just broke. Okay? So unintentionally, you're still guilty. This is Leviticus chapter 5 and 17, Numbers chapter 15, verse 30. Number 229, the penalty for sin, which is the breaking of the Most High's law, is eternal death. All right, Numbers chapter 15, verse 30 through 31. Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 20. Semicolon, Exodus chapter 32, verse 33. And this is what's killing people, sin. 230, number 230. Atonement can be made through the righteousness of the righteous high priest for those who truly repent of sin and turn in complete obedience to Yahawah's laws. Leviticus chapter 16 and 16, 32 through 34. We go through Yahawashi as our high priest. Number 231, the body of one who was executed must be buried the same day. Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 23. That's impossible now. Not impossible. If we establish our laws in this land, then we may be able to do that. The Muslims do it, so we should be able to do it as well. We have a law already established. We just got to bring it to the forefront and have a system in order. This is law concerning slaves.